for the day renters, one of the cases that we've seen many times is often the renter lives in Boston or Metro Boston, and they are someone who prefers to bike as their transportation. They are having out-of-town visitors coming to stay with them for the weekend or for the week, and they don't want to have to change their lifestyle or sit in traffic or be limited to the routes that the T serves. If they want to be able to share their lifestyle with their visitors.
We've had folks who had cargo bikes in the shop and needed a replacement for a couple of days. And we've had folks who've had their car in the shop, or they're a one car family and the other partner needed to be on like a work trip out of town with that car. So we've had some really interesting use cases for those multi-day rentals.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Active Towns channel. My name is John Simmerman, and that is Dorothy, Fennell, and Zack DeClerk from CargoB in the Boston area. We are going to be diving into this really innovative and groundbreaking cargo bike sharing system that they have launched about 15 months ago. It's super, super exciting. But before we do that, I just want to say, if you're enjoying this content here on the Active Towns channel, please consider supporting my efforts by becoming an Active Towns ambassador. Hey, it's super easy to do. If you're here in YouTube, just click on the join button right down below, or you can navigate over to activetowns.org, click on the support tab at the top of the page, and there's several different options, including becoming a Patreon supporter. Okay, let's get right to it with Dot and Zack. Dot and Zack, thank you so much for joining me on the Active Towns podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
I love giving my guests just an opportunity to introduce themselves. So please take it away. Who wants to start in terms of introducing yourself to the audience?
Zack, why don't you start?
Sure. My name is Zack DeClerk, co-founder of CargoB, which is the first on-demand electric bike share, on-demand electric cargo bike share in North America. One of a small handful of operators doing this now, and it's a model that is really thrived in the past second half of the past decade in Europe, and we said, well, why can't we have nice things here? And I'm my neighbor up the street, Dorothy. We started this just about 2 years ago, and launched about 16 months ago to the public on a very small scale, and have been growing since. Prior to that, my background was in nonprofits and photojournalism and multimedia, but I always had my hands in transportation as an advocate, as somebody who gets around on a bicycle as their primary mode of transportation. And when I started having kids, I didn't want to change that. I didn't want to have to make that lifestyle change, because especially in a congested city where, like Boston, where we live, it is really a cheat code to being able to enjoy your life here and get around and have access to the different neighborhoods, and you don't have to worry about the train schedule or traffic conditions. And it's just a really can take some of the more monotonous parts of life, which is getting around, and make it, some of the more enjoyable parts of your day, and connect you to your community. So because of, I found myself on an electric cargo bike, so we started having these test ride events, and trying to really just mostly talking to other families with young children, mostly at that time, just saying like, hey, we do this. This works really great for us. This prevents us, this helps some households be car light. It helps other households be car free. And just people who were curious, who would see us in the neighborhoods, like, what is that thing? And would come, and people would bring their cargo bikes, and neighbors who were curious about it would test them out. And we'd hear the same feedback over and over again. I love this, but I don't have a place to keep it. I don't have a garage or an off-street parking spot, or my landlord wouldn't let me do this. It's way too expensive for a bicycle. And I think there's like an American culture shock here, because car ownership continues to get more expensive. But there's a sticker shock with an $8,000 bicycle that some people in this country have a hard time with, and then other people actually, because you can't finance them, it is actually financially a challenge for a lot of folks to afford. And there's a lot of other barriers to ownership. People aren't sure how often they would use one. It stuck out to us as a great candidate for a shared vehicle, just the way people who need to access a car sometimes use Zipcar. Why can't we have that for electric cargo bikes? So that then birthed CargoB.
Yeah, nice. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Zach. That's great. Excellent introduction and the overview of that. Now, Dot, who the heck is Dot?
Well, Dot grew up in Philadelphia, a city known for its streetcar culture. And I took them frequently with my grandmother, also named Dot, who never learned to drive, but we grew up in the burbs. And so I had an introduction very quickly as a kid that people's ability to move around really switches when you go from being in the burbs to being in the city. And I moved to Boston, like many people do, to go to college, and I stuck around and I was always interested in transportation. I spent the last 20 years as transportation planner, always in this space of doing commuter trip planning, working with businesses, institutions, and business districts, thinking about that space in where you're trying to help people get to work or think about their trips so that you can maximize the way that we use land. And I'm also a mom to 3 kids. I've been a parent now for 12 years. And like Zach, when we started having children, because I already was someone that was regularly taking transit, that was riding a bike, that question and that transition to parenthood, we didn't necessarily go to, we need another car, although we are a family that does have cars. We simply said, we need a different kind of bike. We already had access to that sort of knowledge about biking culture. And the way that we biked shifted. We eventually had a cargo bike. And as a planner, I knew that we're not going very far on average. We're traveling for the majority of our trips 3 miles or less. And these are all very bikeable distances. I knew that people are already consuming cargo bikes in very large quantities. I knew that cargo bikes were a part of mobility share in European cities. And so Zach and I, being neighbors, and then my husband, who's also part of the team in a very small way as our technology expert, that we had an opportunity in Boston because of the scale of the city, the innovation of the city, and just that there was an appetite for it, that why not? Someone needs to try this out, that there is such a focus, and I'm glad to see it, on cities looking at the commercial aspect for cargo bike delivery as a last mile solution. And I think it's a great place for municipalities to be focusing. There's also an interest from municipalities to provide the ability for ownership through subsidies and rebate programs. But what Zach and I are specifically doing is saying that cargo bikes, because what our vehicles are in our fleet are true car replacements that are going to be out of reach for somebody because of the size and because of the cost, that specifically move towards the as needed on demand shared model. And that's what we've been doing for the past 15 months now, is putting them onto the shared market.
Fantastic. Now, I pulled up a map of Boston, so for the viewing audience here, you can kind of get a lay of the land. Now, what neighborhood are you guys in? Are you based right there in Boston proper?
So we think of it as Metro Boston. So we are in Cambridge, Somerville, Arlington, and Boston. Not Brookline yet, but working on it. We currently have, Zach is at 9 stations and 10 bikes that are out. And we're about to expand and put out 5 more bicycles. The number of stations, we're still nailing that down because we have a long-term agreement with the transit agency. And so we're still sort of deciding where those stations will be. So you'll see a shift in that number of stations.
Fantastic. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, so if you basically where we're operating all falls within 5 miles of downtown Boston. So if you took you put a pin in downtown Boston, you drew a 5 mile radius, all of our stations fall within that 5 mile radius. So on the outskirts, we're in East Arlington and Rosendale and Brighton, which are all two of those are Boston proper neighborhoods. One of them is its own municipality. And really, our goal now is Dot mentioned streetcar and streetcar suburbs. I mean, a lot of Boston was developed in the end of the 19th century, turn of the 20th century. In these streetcar suburbs, which is where a lot of the most bike friendly kind of communities are in Boston. We started there where there's an existing bike culture, but in reality, our goal with the MBTA and with the conversations we're having with municipalities in the area is to really infill into that urban core. Because right now we really only have one bike downtown, but those downtown neighborhoods, people who are familiar with Boston might think of like the South End, Back Bay, the North End, Fenway, more urban parts of Cambridge, like Kendall Square and Central Square. Those are really where we have the highest proportion of households without cars. And you kind of have that different demographic because of our users. Families with kids are the most likely to maybe be a CargoB user for a little while. And then if they use it enough, if they have the means and they have the space, end up purchasing a cargo bike of their own, which has happened. Some recent cargo bike owners were started as CargoB users. However, in the urban core where you have a lot of people who are in college, just out of college, in situations with a lot of roommates that don't have kids, these are people who will probably continue to use CargoB to meet their cargo bike needs because of the nature of their neighborhoods that they live in, the availability of off-street space, and all of those things.
I love it. I love it. Now we've got your website up here. This is the landing page for your website, the home page. And you just mentioned something there that was very, very interesting. And that is that relationship with the municipalities. How does that come about? I mean, are you having to negotiate these individually with each of them? And then secondly, the second part to that is it sounds like you've got a relationship, some form of relationship with the transit agency as well. And is that negotiated separately?
Yeah, it is. So we look at our partners as having shared interest and shared goals. So you have a place where there's high density, a need to solve a transportation problem, and a desire to be a good neighbor. What we're offering is something that municipalities aren't able to offer. So you think about it in terms of who is providing compost pickup, who is providing your trash pickup. These are all vended services. We reach out to different municipalities. It's an ongoing process and relationship. We, offer or suggest what we can offer, and it's a negotiation. Some cities we're still talking to, other ones we were able to, based on what their needs were, lock in a agreement rather quickly. So Arlington, we're operating in. Boston, we will be starting a fleet program for employees, but we do not have bikes in the public right away as of yet. Cambridge and Somerville, we're still talking to.
Yeah, and to clarify, we don't have bikes stationed in the public right of way, but we do operate on public streets. So when we launched our first 3 locations and actually first 5 locations, perhaps maybe even 6 or 7, the bikes are situated for round trip station on private property. So all of our agreements were with private property owners who agreed, business owners. We were really scrappy in the beginning, and some of our first stations were in friends' driveways. And we're moving away from that model. But it was, the goal was to not wait until we had everything lined up, but just to get it out there to see if people would use this and then to build from there. So it was lowest barrier of entry. And that actually came from advice, thanks to Dot's planning background. We're very, we're not a tech startup background founding founding duo. We are, we come from the advocacy world, the policy world, the planning world, the engineering world. My wife is an engineer, a transportation engineer herself. So we had those networks, and it was suggested to us by some people in the public sector that, if you just want to launch this right now, start with private property owners just to get it off the ground. And we had a big policy win, which was the collection of municipalities that host the standard bike share blue bikes in Metro Boston. That RFP, the contract of that operator, was coming up on the end of a 10-year term. So just as CargoB was launching, there was an RFP out there, and we were able to talk to the people writing that RFP to add some clarifying language around cargo bikes as an exception, because there's basically an exclusivity clause in the old, and I'm getting really wonky here. So, but there was an exclusivity clause that created a lot of gray area, and some people would say it prevented us from operating stations on public land. And we were able to, in the new RFP that locks in the next contract for the next 10 years, carve out an exception for cargo bikes, which kind of clears the road for public partnerships for CargoB. So it was a really good timing for us, and it's kind of thanks to Dot's background in planning and our connections in the public sector to do this, thoughtfully, and not just be, tech disruptors, putting something out there and breaking things, but, we don't want to break things. We want to build things, so we are breaking patterns and habits, but we also want to be good neighbors. And these are large bikes, and we don't want that. We don't want people tripping over them. We don't want our stations to be trashed. So when we grow and when we think about where we place these bikes, we want to be thoughtful and we want to be good neighbors.
When you kind of rewind and go back to the origin stories of the seeds that were planted to move forward, where were you drawing inspiration from to launch CargoB? Where were you drawing inspiration from?
I'm thinking about what Zack just said, and now I think this is like our new motto. We're not here to break stuff. We're here to build stuff. And what we're doing is building upon the legacy of those who have established bike share in American cities. And so we are the first ones to put cargo bikes on bike share. And it's very important that we do so in a very thoughtful way. And I think that there have been some lessons learned that we can't just put things out and say, deal with us. One other lesson I think about is that being the first ones to do it, a lot of other cities are looking at us and analyzing and wondering, what are we doing and watching us. So it's really important that we are thoughtful. And what I constantly go back to, and this was similar to work that I had been doing in the business communities, is people having to think about how they're traveling, because I was working specifically for workplaces, of how they get to work. So they have a transportation problem to solve, and it's very personal, and their entire life depends on it, especially if they have children, because it depends on where the kids go to school. I mean, it just becomes so difficult. And I would do a lot of hand holding and explaining, and people would see me and see this ease by which I'm able to move around with 3 kids on a bicycle that can carry 300 pounds, and I'm going to the grocery store and swim practice drop off. I'm like all the things. And it becomes this how are you doing this? And I always try to come from a place of not judging somebody for the choices that they're making, because I know that people are just trying to get to where they're going. And I try to always lead with seeing through people's frustration, because transportation can be it could be political and full of feelings. And I like to enter those conversations always seeing the glass half full, silver linings, and despite where we are, as we're moving towards mobility solutions, that CargoB is here to provide a solution. And when you're ready for us in your city, we're here for you.
I love it. I love it. And you kind of touched upon something that I was going to ask you eventually, was that, do you guys have aspirations of going into other cities? And the way you phrased that, I guess the answer is yes. At some point in time, you'll be interested in opening up in other cities. I spend a lot of time in the Netherlands. And so I have been brushing shoulders with this company for years, Cargoroo. And I have to think that this was somehow on your radar too, the experience that Cargoroo was in and going through. And of course, they actually shut down from operation. They declared bankruptcy and went out of business for a while. And then they were brought back, and Moby has brought them back. I'm assuming that there were some good learning experiences from the way that was structured. Can you speak to that, Zach, a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. And Dorothy had an early conversation with some of the folks at Cargoroo very early on when we were thinking about this. We've talked to friends who are well plugged into, work over in the Netherlands and other countries in the EU. From my understanding, the bankruptcy and the restructuring and the buying out and the relaunching of Cargoroo had a lot to do with things that just happen in business, not demand for cargo bike share. So, we never really saw that as like alarm, like, oh, is this a viable business? It's more, that happens sometimes depending on your strategy for growth and how aggressive you are trying to grow your operations. And, sometimes business decisions work out and sometimes they don't work out. I know that there was a large public partnership that they were banking on that didn't work and put them in a bind. So they were able to restructure. So I think like Dot said, we knew that this was something that had come to be in European cities, and we wanted to bring it to the U.S. And contextualize it around the U.S. There's certain things that are different about the built environment here that we have to be mindful about, and we're early, and we get this feedback like we're early. Will the infrastructure for safe mobility infrastructure be better in 10 more years? Will it allow us to expand the network more effectively, more easily? Yes. But we're also in a much better place than we were 10 years ago. And I think one of the reasons that Dot and I started CargoB is because we didn't want to wait. We didn't want to wait for the city to do it. We didn't want to wait for the big bike share operators to do it. We just wanted to just do it because we knew that there was an appetite for it, and it be kind of that if you build it, they will come. And the thing about launching something like CargoB is it can be done much more quickly than going after the whole public process of redesigning infrastructure, which has become more complicated in our federal environment in the U.S. So, one way to improve safety and mobility with our existing infrastructure is to capitalize on, the routes in neighborhoods well served by that infrastructure that we already have, and just get more people biking. There's power in numbers, there's safety in numbers, and we're already seeing that. You see the market for electric cargo bike ownership in the U.S. and certain U.S. cities has absolutely exploded. But they're just there are just so many barriers to ownership, and we knew that the joy and the kind of like the life hack that this was for us, and we saw it when other people would get it, and they'd be like, "I didn't think it could be this easy to get from this neighborhood to that neighborhood at that time of day." With my kids, with my groceries, with whatever, and just giving people access to that was something that we just wanted to go and do.
Great. Dot, anything to add from the learning from Cargoroo to CargoB?
My now 6-year-old had a fantastic time in, might not say this properly, Utrecht. Yeah, no, I think what's great about it is quality vehicles. We use the same ones, UrbanArrow. So like very quality, but not precious, can like withstand weather. We do have similar weather, although we have a little bit more weather than they do. And it's simple. Walk up, scan, and go. I mean, what else do you want? and really focused on no barriers, because there are so many. Life is full of barriers. Let's like remove them so that you can use these things, because the use cases are endless.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned Utrecht. That is, in fact, one of their target cities that they have relaunched in. And what I loved about the website there, I hadn't visited the website in some time, but this morning when I went over there, I loved how they talked about it was truly a beloved service. It really was. The people that I know that live there, good friends there and colleagues, they just loved that flexibility of being able to, check one out and go and know that they're sort of sprinkled around the neighborhood and the community, and be able to do that. We'll keep our fingers crossed that y'all continue to make advances of being able to get these deployed in a thoughtful way within the public realm, so you don't have to just rely on them hanging out on private property. But what a wonderful thing. And I'm sitting here marveling at the UrbanArrow and the flexibility of these bikes and these cargo bikes and what they can do. And yeah, you can throw stuff in there, you can have people in there. It's just, and you mentioned it earlier, you just throw the whole family in there and off you go. It's just, I love this concept too of just empowering people. And I know you know exactly what I mean by this, and I do have a long tail cargo bike myself. Is it engenders curiosity. People start asking about, what is this? Where did you get this? And how does this work? So I think there's this pent up demand of need, and there's a curiosity of, maybe this will work in my life too.
So I do have a follow-up comment to that, is that from talking to bicycle manufacturers that do business on both sides of the pond, that in the U.S. we're very focused on long tail sales. We have a high propensity of long tail sales, so in Europe those companies are trying to sell long tails, and then here in the U.S. we're trying to sell bakfiets because they sell a whole bunch of them in the European market. And one of the reasons is because there are so many policies and design that force you not to have a car. And here we can have cars. The reason why we specifically picked the bakfiets was because it is the most utilitarian and the least likely kind of bike that you're going to buy, and the least likely you have access to here in the US, because you can simply walk up to it, load it up, and then you can go. We do have the benefit in our City of Boston program that they already own 3 turns, so we're assuming the management of 3 assets. So we are testing turns in our fleet. So it will be interesting to see what it's like for customers to load those up, as well as the bakfiets. But yeah, you're right. We really wanted people to just have the experience of a car trunk, that you just walk up to it, throw your stuff in, and life is easy.
Yeah. And just to clarify, Dot brought this up earlier in the call too. The pilot that we're starting with the City of Boston, she mentioned employees. That's City of Boston employees. So public employee. So we're running a pilot program that we're about to launch, where City of Boston employees will have access to a standard CargoB, which is a built-out UrbanArrow, and then 3 long tails that the city already owned. The CargoB, the UrbanArrow is ours, and they'll have it's a private fleet, so the city pays a flat rate, and they have unlimited access to do city business with these bikes for a period of time while we pilot it out. So that's something that we're exploring. Not just our standard, our main goal, our main product is the on-demand, anybody can use it, anybody can walk up, scan and go service. However, we do have other revenue streams. We do side of bike advertising. We're exploring other kinds of private fleets, not just with municipalities, but with private buildings and tenants and hotels. So there's lots of different ways to integrate these kinds of bikes into the public realm. And we're exploring all those different options in addition to our regular on-demand service.
Right. Speaking of your regular on-demand service, Zach, you uploaded this heat map. Why don't you walk us through this?
Yeah, sure. So this is our heat map from the first 15 months of operations. You're going to see hotspots down in the bottom of this map. You're going to see hotspots in Jamaica Plain and Rosendale. Out to the west, you'll see hotspots in Alston and Brighton. And then near these are all where our stations are. There's one hotspot downtown in the Seaport. That's where a station is. And you'll see that. And we have right now, other than the Seaport, but this is about to change. But in our early operations, we had no stations in the main urban core. But you can see riders are going there, so people are getting, they're mostly getting bikes, and they're either doing neighborhood trips near the station or they're going downtown or cross town. There's one exception that you'll see, that really bright heat. This is up top on the top left is the Minuteman Bikeway, which extends in and out of Boston, and it's a combination of our Cambridge and our East Arlington bikes making trips all the way out to Lexington and beyond. That's really the only instance where we're seeing a lot of trips out of the city because of that awesome bikeway. But for the most part, you're seeing people doing, neighborhood trips, generally round trip under 5 miles mostly. And some people making, the trek downtown. So really filling in those gaps and making the center of that map, the hottest part of that map, is what we'll be doing with our partnership with the MBTA and starting to site bikes at train stations and other public properties.
Yeah. Dot, you mentioned earlier the work that you had been doing previously, and I believe you were probably working in TDM, Transportation Demand Management. Is that correct? Okay, fantastic. Based on looking at this heat map here and some of the things that we also alluded to earlier, which is there's only so much we can do, the three of us, in terms of changing the built environment and creating a safer, more inviting place for people to ride a bike, let alone a cargo bike. But I've spent a fair amount of time documenting what it looks like in Boston and in Cambridge and in Somerville. When I look at this heat map, I don't know, Dot, this kind of reminds me of where some of the nicer places to ride a bike are.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're doing a lot of storytelling right now about how much people actually ride, because you get feedback of no one's going to ride these bikes, and I think there is some culture shift happening, and we have to work with folks to get beyond bikes as occasional whimsical things and bicycles as sport to bicycles as transport. And the reality is, and I've been talking to major cargo bike shops across the country, and I've been asking them, who are buying your bikes? And they tell us families, and this is all anecdotal, but it's backed up by their sales. And they say they're being purchased by families first because they're pushed by the urgency to solve a transportation problem. And they're being primarily ridden by women and really by moms. So if you look at who's most risk averse to get on a bike, it's moms, because women tend to be more risk averse. And then you add the thing of they're carrying children. So what this says to me is that these are our indicator species, and that the area that moms are riding in with kids are these smaller sort of radiuses. So you take that 3 to 5 miles and then shrink it to 1 to 3 miles. And I look at this map and I think, okay, so people are adding in cargo bike trips to their other trips. And that's good to see this. And what cities are, because you can have two things at once. People are adding in their trips. And while they do that, and that grows organically, cities are then connecting these nodes where these things are happening. And I think collectively together, that's going to be the culture shift that we need and is happening, that will just gradually kind of drown out the sentiment that no one rides bikes. bikes, because the reality is the cargo bike market is $860 million. I mean, like, a lot of people are buying bikes, and they wouldn't be buying them for no reason. I mean, like, these are expensive, and this is specifically cargo bikes. So they're buying them because they're riding them, and they're riding them to solve a transportation problem.
Yeah. I love it.
And
Yeah.
And that map is also like a great advocacy tool as we continue to push for more communities to have access to safe mobility infrastructure. We could say, like, hey, we'd love to be in this neighborhood too. We'd love to see more ridership in this neighborhood. But if you look at this map, those hottest spots are some of the most comfortable, as you said, John, and some of the most comfortable bike corridors, most well-built infrastructure in the greater Boston area. So, if you build it, they will come, whether it's providing a shared electric cargo bike or a safe place to ride that cargo bike.
Yeah, and I really do encourage people to go back into my archive of some of the videos that I've shot out of the Cambridge and Boston area, a little bit of Somerville as well. It's impressive to see the evolution of that area. I've documented it several times over a period of years, and so it's really wonderful to see, especially in Cambridge, the build out of the network and how it's starting to mature. And again, to your point, Dot, it's all ages and abilities, because you're absolutely right. Women and children are the indicator species of a safe and inviting environment. And so when we see more people out there doing that, then that's an indication that we're doing something right. We're creating a safer environment. But there is no such thing as a perfect environment. Even the city of Utrecht, I went out for a very long ride with the city designer who is building out their bike network, and he was expressing to me that they still have decades of work yet to make it even better and safer and more inviting there. So even like the best of the best in the world, they're still going, yeah, it's not good enough yet. We need to still work on this. Now, earlier we alluded to how easy it was to check one out, and I think that's what we're looking at here. Walk us through what's going on here.
All right, yeah. So, that was one of the things that we wanted to be able to do is to tap into what people already know how to do with bike share. Boston is one of the big 5 bike share markets. We have top 5 in ridership. So you have basically New York City, Chicago, San Francisco Bay Area, Boston, and DC are the largest bike share markets in the U.S. at least. And so people are every year, people are familiar with bike share and using the regular bike share system. So we wanted to tap into that familiarity and have an app-based solution where, as opposed to like renting from a bike shop where you have to, reach out, make a reservation, you have to go to them, there's a lot of back and forth, which we do some of that with our more extended rentals that we offer. But our main offering is that by the minute rental. So you just download the CargoB app, you put a little bit of money in your app wallet, and you scan and go. You can lock up and pause your trip at the store, at the park, wherever you may be, and then you can end your ride back where you started. So it is an A-to-A trip, which is in a way different than a free-floating system where you can end your ride in a lot of different places, or a stationed A to B system like Blue Bikes, where you can end your ride in a handful of stationed places. And that's the way we're operating for now for a variety of reasons. One is the use case for cargo bikes is different. People are much more likely to do trip chaining. They're much less likely to use use CargoB for commuting and being at work all day and then coming back. This is for weekend errands, evening adventures, weekend adventures, and people who, live close to a station are the most likely to use it. And we have many users who, we just put out a survey that said, like, the biggest barrier to them not using CargoB more often is the distance to their home to a station. So as we can build out more stations in more neighborhoods, we'll see ridership increase. But yeah, it's really as easy as scan and go. And there's a chain, you can lock to, bike rack where you're at your destination or your pit stop, and try to keep it simple.
Great. Now, Dot, if I give you a couple of scenarios, can you sort of estimate, kind of how much it would cost me to do this particular trip? Okay, cool. Let's just say I've got like an errand to run. I need the bike for an hour. I'm going to be, I'm going to getting the CargoB, and I'm going to jump in, and I've got like 20 minutes of riding to a particular location. And I'm going to pop in and purchase my item. I've got something that's big that I want to carry back to that A to A, type of situation, or maybe I'm stopping off, at my apartment or townhome or whatever, and dropping it off, but then I'm taking the CargoB. Let's say it's just a round trip of an hour. How much was that typically going to run me?
Well, it's 25 cents a minute. So we did a price comparison to TNCs, which is ride hailing, Uber and Lyft, Zipcar, and Electric Blue Bikes, which is our bike share, if you are not a member. So 25 cents a minute is a really reasonable cost for what you get. You're not in traffic, and you go door to door. And so that's the cost. So that would be $15 an hour plus $2.75 for an unlock fee, which is also comparable to Blue Bike unlock fee. We do offer our if you want to have an annual membership, we are piloting that, and that would be 60% off your trips. If you are which is like a real deal, all trips, a really good deal. Because we don't want you to have to be rushing. We just want you to be out doing your ride. We offer day rentals. We do have a lot. Boston is a huge tourism city. We believe that America's walking city has space to become America's bicycling city, because walking and bicycling go hand in hand. The same infrastructure serves both. And so if you're here for a day, $100 for a bicycle for 24 hours, and we can bring it to you. If you are here for more than 3 days, we drop it to $80 a day, which is comparable to bike shops that would rent you a bicycle.
I love it. Because that was the second question. That was the second scenario is, say I'm a local family and I live right there in Cambridge, and I want to take, this CargoB thing has been very, very cool. I've used it for a few errands, but you know what? I want to throw my kids in the front, in the bakfiets, and I want to go to the park along the river and spend the afternoon there. I now have a way to do this, and I know that I can actually save some money too if I'm also a member, an annual member of the program. And so there's kind of an affordable option for that special day, that picnic that's being delivered. And maybe this is a test case. Maybe this is like the test picnic case before making that decision of buying my own UrbanArrow from the local UrbanArrow dealer. I'm assuming there is a local UrbanArrow dealer. Is there?
We have many. Yeah.
Good. All right. Perfect.
Yeah. That would be $9 an hour for an annual membership, if you were an annual member.
Yeah. So and for the day renters, one of the cases that we've seen many times with is often the renter lives in Boston or Metro Boston, and they are someone who prefers to bike as their transportation. They are having out-of-town visitors coming to stay with them for the weekend or for the week, and they don't want to have to change their lifestyle or sit in traffic or be limited to the routes that the T serves. To have if they want to be able to share their lifestyle with their visitors, and so we've had people rent CargoB to kind of extend that lifestyle to the people that they're hosting, as well as people who often we've had people who use cargo bikes in their home city are staying in a hotel in downtown Boston, and they're like, well, this is how I get around in my city. I would like also to get around this city this way too. So CargoB fills that need in addition to our on-demand service.
Yeah, I love it. Go ahead, Dot. Yeah.
Can I also add, we've had folks who had cargo bikes in the shop and needed a replacement for a couple of days. And we've had folks who've had their car in the shop, or they're a one car family and the other partner needed to be on like a work trip out of town with that car. So we've had some really interesting use cases for those multi-day rentals.
I love it. I love it. That's great. I love this too. I love this little triplex of photos here, because this kind of captures the zeitgeist of, I think, a lot of the cases that we're talking about here. In the center there, it looks like we're all packed up. Maybe we are going for a picnic, and but we also have the one on the right with the filled full of the harvest of the fall with the pumpkins, and this brings such a big smile to me that this is what we're talking about, Dot, and you were talking about it earlier about, the use cases of these, and from a transportation demand management perspective, the TDM perspective, is that these can be meaningful utilitarian trips, but they can also be quite joyful. And from my perspective of behavior change, which is my background in public health, is that the more joyful we can make this and the more routine that we can do this over and over and over again, we get habit formation, which is just the magic thing of being able to get more people doing it more often.
Yeah, that's a really good point, John. And well, I would just say real quick is when we have people critiquing or curious about price comparisons of like, getting, a TNC versus, taking a CargoB or getting a zip car, is like, it's not just, this is not apples to apples, because people get on these and they just have the biggest smile, and it can make a chore the best part of your day. So it's you're paying, if you could do an apples to apples comparison, like I have a utilitarian need, I need to run this errand, I need to fix this transportation problem in my life. But we also add that there's that added layer of like, but you could also enjoy the experience and not be stuck in traffic and fighting for a parking spot or whatever it is.
I do want to say this because I live in a city where Waymo is operating. So Uber has now flooded our market with Waymo cars. And I know that some of my colleagues and friends in the area have used it. And there's a wow factor to it right now. So it's kind of like instilling a bit of joy and a bit of fun because it's different and it's new and et cetera. And so you have that little novelty aspect of it. That's going to soon wear off, just like the novelty wore off with the TNCs after they became ubiquitous. But I don't think that the joy that you get from riding a bike and riding a cargo bike is going to wear off, because it has staying power. I mean, just riding a bike, period, regardless of the type of bike, instills a sense of joy, because you're also connecting so much to your environment. Now, obviously, there are situations where it's not very joyful, like if it's pelting you with rain and sleet, and it's not a very pleasant environment. But for the most part, what we're talking about here is, gee, how about this? You can actually go do meaningful things, utilitarian trips, and get a kick in the pants at the same time and enjoy this. This is fun. So anyways, I just wanted to instill that. Dot, you had something you wanted to say about this as well.
I'm now looking up how many days of rain does Boston get. So Zach, if you can look it up for me, days.
Well, we're currently in a very significant drought right now. So,
but what I was going to say is we did just survey our ridership. Out of 115 people who had entered this survey, and it was like 90%, I have to go back and look at it, but they are car owners, they are drivers. And even though they are car owners, speaking of behavior change, they are choosing not to drive their cars. They would rather, for these short distance trips, because it is not a pleasant experience, not just hop on a bike, but hop on a cargo bike. And so unlike Waymo, like this desire to stream, I don't want to say streamline, I'm not here to optimize life, but to just make life a little more pleasant, I don't think that's going to wear off. They might decide that they like this so much that they'll move to ownership, and that's fine, because there's always going to be a new crop of of customers, because we're really thinking about a location where there is a high density. So right now we're exploring partnerships with university campuses where every year there's a new bunch of students. We have a partnership with Harvard University, and then we have some other universities that I can't mention because they're not landed yet, that we are talking to. But that's the goal, is that we would love for you to be our customer, whether it's occasionally or it's more often, but that we understand that if you love this so much that you end up just buying your own cargo bike.
I love it. I really love this shot here too. And for the listening only audience, this particular photograph shows a CargoB UrbanArrow standard issued rental bike with two adults. And so you have an adult riding in the front cargo bay area. And the reason why I love that is there's oftentimes this assumption that, it's only for parents of small children. And cargo bikes have a much broader usage. And so from a case use study of being able to carry real cargo, whether it's a whole bunch of pumpkins or, we saw earlier like an air conditioning unit or something like that or whatever, and then the kids. But, my good friend Brandon Lust from Carmel, Indiana, his wife Tatiana frequently gets in the front of their UrbanArrow and they go on date night. And I think that that's a really good point to put, is that, again, the joyful factor of, we're going to go do a meaningful utilitarian trip. We're going to go out to dinner. But you know what? It's a beautiful evening. Let's have fun. Let's jump in the CargoB and off we go.
Yeah. And we have had many users do just that. And that will not only put a smile on the rider's face, but that typically also puts a smile on spectators' faces when they see an adult riding a cargo bike. It's kind of a bit of a spectacle, but it's great. And we've had riders whose partner doesn't ride a bike, and they would like to take them, to the park or something like that, or to date. My wife go ahead.
I was just going to say, hold on to your thought there for a second, Zach. I just wanted to instill something really, really good. You just mentioned something that a partner who doesn't ride and they're able to go. I would also include something like my good friends Chris and Melissa Bruntlett in Delft. When she injured herself and wasn't able to ride her own bike, and then, they rented a Cargoroo at the time, and she was able to get that trip. Or a case of a person who maybe have a disability and isn't able to ride their own bike, but they're able to catch a ride and go to that meaningful destination, together with their family, their loved ones. Another great example of that. And then the add-on to that, if I circle this back around to built environment and infrastructure, cities, this is what we're talking about. When you build safe and inviting bike infrastructure for all ages and abilities, you're empowering mobility for people who may have a disability, whether permanently or just, for a short period of time, in the case of Melissa when she had injured her leg. So anyways. Continue.
Yeah. So I literally was just about to say that. So my wife, who does ride a bike, had a major knee surgery last year and was in a wheelchair. I started taking her to physical therapy multiple times a week in a CargoB because her physical therapy was 3 miles away. If people are familiar with Boston, we live in Jamaica Plain. Physical therapy was in the South End. 3 miles. We took the train, but she was in a wheelchair, so we had to navigate the elevator system. That was door to door, 45 minutes. We drove a car 35 minutes in the middle of the day, not during rush hour, to go 3 miles. And then I took her in the CargoB, and it was 25 minutes so from that point on, we always took the cargo bike to get her to her appointments. Yeah.
You bring up a really good point, and I try to emphasize this on the channel a lot, is when we look at the astounding percentages of mode share of the Dutch riding bikes for meaningful trips. The reason why they do it is it's pragmatic. It's a practical solution to mobility. And you just highlighted that, Zach, as well. Yeah, Dot.
I'm just thinking one of the ideas we have for like future revenue is, which is a model here in the US, is do we get into bicycle leasing? You see it with Wombi. You see it with Ride Panda that's geared towards workplaces. And we had a Dutch student from Harvard last year who had a permanent disability, and she had an aide, or she had like a friend or something, and she was like, I want to lease a bike for a semester so that my friend can ride me around. And we weren't, but I was like, of course you're Dutch. So I laughed, not at her, but just that pragmatic of like, you're a solution. I want to use your service. And I'm sorry that we couldn't provide her that at that time.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Dot, because I did profile a program in Oslo. The WE program in Oslo, and WE is spelled WHEE. And Carrie Ann, who launched that program there, we went out for an on-bike interview there on the streets of Oslo, and we talked about that. And that's their model is a long-term leasing type of situation, so that folks can lease it for. I'm not sure if it's just a year lease or if it's broken up into shorter leases as well, whether it's 3 and 6 months as well. But what an interesting model. And of course, that comes on the heels of another leasing type of model or subscription type of model, which was the Swap Fiets program, also back in the Netherlands, and then starting to expand and spread across Europe. And it's the ubiquitous, standard Dutch bike, but has one slight difference. It has a very visible light blue front wheel. And so you always know that the tire, the light blue tire, the rubber on it, that's a Swap Fiets. And they're just everywhere. It's so cool. And people love them because... Everywhere. Yeah, they're everywhere. And they love them because if they're not a mechanic, if there is an issue, all they have to do is get on their app and say, hey, got a flat tire, the bike is parked in front of my office right now, and the Swap Fiets guys will deploy, either fix the flat, swap the bike out, literally swap the bike out, Swap Fiets. And so it's cool. That's a very, very good point, Dot.
Don't they also have different sizes? So like you can get like kids all the way up to adults. Yeah, which is amazing because with my 3 kids, granted, I have a husband who's a former bike industry guy. So we had them on good bikes. They age up. We know how to sell them. But I know so many folks who like come to us and they're like, what bike do I need for my kid? And I wish that there were. Well, what I'll say is keep on building out that bike network, because great bike networks beget more bike industry stuff. And eventually we'll have our own Swap Fiets here. Yeah.
And in fact, I'm glad you mentioned that about the children's bikes. I did profile a program there in Utrecht, and please pardon me, folks. I'm so sorry. I can't remember the name of your program. I will find that name and I'll put it right here in the program. In fact, I'll probably cut away from this photo and highlight the video from that program. But it's a wonderful program where the parents can actually do a Swap Fiets type of program, a monthly leasing rental type of program of a bike. But then as the child grows out of that bike, they simply bring the bike back. The kid gets the next bike up. They're able to test it to see if it's the one that they like, etc. There's usually different choices between colors and styles and all of that. And they have a little test track inside there so the kids can ride around it and on the interior of it. It's a real hoot, and it takes away that burden because and this was actually a project that was a college project from the university there in Utrecht that a couple of students did as a master's project. And they were like, how do we decrease the amount of these children's bikes that are ending up in like being discarded or in the landfill or something like that? So they considered it like a recycle bike program of doing that. And they have a whole bunch of volunteers that come in and rehab the bikes that get turned back in, rehab bikes that get donated to them, and then keep them in that stream. So kind of a fun thing. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, it's really fun. The other thing that's really fun is this beautiful image right here. We're creating the narrative again that this is not only just for those utilitarian trips, it's also for a second to take a deep breath and slow this crazy world down a little bit and take in a beautiful sight together.
You can't drive to that spot.
Yeah.
Apparently you can if you have a CargoB.
Yeah. Zach likes to say CargoB gets you where a car can't go.
I love it. Is there any specific special story behind the word or the name CargoB?
So as you kind of think really deeply, this is a great picture. This is two of my children. It really illustrates what kind of world do you want? Do you want a world where, just like, what are we prioritizing? The safety of our most precious cargo, or big vehicles take up space? I will add that our neighbor who has this truck finally did realize that it was really hard to park in garages and it was hard to drive in town. So he did sell this. And now he has something that is much smaller. So good for him. But the name came from thinking about bees and how they are a very simple creature that do a very practical thing every single day that we don't really think about. But then when they work together, they do something quite remarkable. And we kind of were like, just kind of riffing on that a little bit. But we kind of got down like a little, like too deep of a rabbit hole. And we realized we're like cargo bikes. Like we don't need to go any further than that. We were like Cargo Boston. Like we went cargo bikes in Boston.
Cargo better, Cargo Boston, Cargo bike.
Cargo better.
Versatile.
Yeah. I love it. And what's great about this particular image, Dot, we're going to go back to this image of your neighbor's former vehicle. For the listening only audience, we see a picture of the CargoB UrbanArrow with a couple kids here in front of one of the typical North American massive pickup trucks. And you can see just how massive it is, because you can see it's easy to understand that there's a tremendous blind spot in front of this vehicle and in back of this vehicle where children could be hanging out. And so what I love about the illustration of what this is the impracticality of something of this size, a behemoth of this size, which more often than not is not being used for a true work vehicle. I grew up on a ranch where I had multiple trucks and they were work vehicles, and we had tremendous bed space in the back. The incredibly ever shrinking bed space and cargo hold bed space of these massive trucks is just, it's laughable. But the vast majority of the time, these massive vehicles are carrying a load that looks like this, which is a grocery store run to Whole Foods.
That's right.
Yeah, it's good stuff. What additional thoughts have we not covered that you want to make sure to leave the audience with?
Yeah, we had a lot. I would think the one thing that we just didn't say is the potential of the climate benefits here. There's a lot of focus on the transition of gas-powered vehicles to EVs, but an UrbanArrow takes about 7% of the kilowatts per hour to operate than a typical EV. So not only is the vehicle taking up less space and allows for more efficient land use patterns, but really it's 7%. So the grid in which we pull our power from is still not decarbonized. So there's that angle too, that the more people we can mode shift is something that I think still does not have enough focus in North American cities as a solution here. EV transition is super important and very great, but it's just like there's just no comparison really in that sense, and not even thinking about the embedded carbon to build these and ship them, and so it is one thing that we're really here to solve mobility problems and help people enjoy their communities more. But the climate benefits of bringing these to putting more people on a vehicle like this is definitely undeniable.
Yeah. Dot, final words.
I think that cargo bikes solve a simple problem. We're going short distances a majority of the time. I think that cargo bikes are a next step in welcoming a lot of women into bike share who are in that age bracket of having children, and the price point is out of reach. I think it will be, I'm curious to see where the market goes across the country. And I think that demonstrating that we can do it here is going to be a template and inspiration for other cities to say, moving things in cars doesn't have to be a default, and that actually we have real solutions to our mobility challenges in American cities, as well as smaller cities and universities across this country. I don't think we have to just give up and say we're destined to just live in our cars for the remainder of time here in America. I think we really have a future that is positive here.
I love it. And again, the website is ridecargob.com. Dot and Zach, thank you so much for joining me on the Active Towns podcast. This has been so much fun.
Thank you. We enjoyed it.
Hey, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Dot and Zach from CargoB. And if you did, please, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and share it with a friend. And if you haven't done so already, I'd be honored to have you subscribe to the channel. Just click on the subscription button down below and ring that notifications bell. And folks, if you're enjoying this content here on the Active Towns channel, please consider supporting my efforts by becoming an Active Towns ambassador. Hey, it's super easy to do. Just click on the join button right here in YouTube down below, or you can navigate over to activetowns.org. Click on the support tab at the top of the page, and there's several different options, including becoming a Patreon member. The patrons do get early and ad-free access to all my video content, but you can also leave a donation to the nonprofit, as well as buy me a coffee. Again, every little bit adds up and is very much appreciated and makes a huge difference in being able to keep this channel moving forward. I'm going to be honest, we just don't earn that much here on YouTube in the ad revenue, so I could not do this without your support. Okay, that's it for this video. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, this is John signing off by wishing you much activity, health, and happiness. Cheers.
And again, just want to send a huge thank you to all my Active Towns ambassadors supporting the channel financially via YouTube memberships, YouTube super thanks, as well as making contributions to the nonprofit and joining my Patreon. Every little bit adds up and is very much appreciated. Thank you all so much.